Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Fins and NFL analyst for A to Z Sports, joins us. And Kyle, everybody's going, holy smokes, what's going on? We knew it was coming, man. Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Nick Achane, and, of course, three-play James Daniels.
James Daniels, Joe. Jeez.
What, more to come?
Yeah, probably. It's I think the guys that went yesterday, Nick Westbrook aside, but it's big salary names, right? James Daniels was due just short of $8 million. Tyreek was due $36 million, and Bradley was owed over $20 million in compensation. Their cap charges were obviously it's a different number, but just the cash and the payroll and cutting those guys. And whether it's James and the three plays he gave you this year, or Tyreek coming off the injury that he had, or Bradley was scheduled to be the 11th highest paid edge rusher in the league this year from a cash perspective. He was getting within $3 million of guys like Daniil Hunter and Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
So when you look at those names at those dollar amounts with their individual situations, I think any hopes that you had of potentially getting anything for any of those guys was dead on arrival, right? Like those dollar amounts for those players and their circumstances are non-starters. Like nobody's going to be interested in doing that, and they know you're up against the cap crunch.
Right.
So that was the number one question that I had from fans yesterday was, why didn't they try to trade in these guys? I just think the economics and their situations, you were never going to get anything for any of those guys with their circumstances. And I think the guys that are left, I'm sure there will be more changes, but I think there's some opportunity to at least explore some markets with some of the other guys that were kind of curious how their fate is going to end up going this offseason.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because you're right. They knew, like, hey, man, we've looked at your financial situation you're in right now. You can't keep those guys. We're not doing anything with that. With that number, no shot. Release them. We'll get them. If we want them, we'll get them. And Bradley Chubb, I thought was a top 10 player on the team last year with his 8.5 sacks, but he's going to go somewhere. He's going to be fine. I think the Tyreek Hill one's very interesting. Not that we let him go. That was a slam dunk. But the dislocated knee, the ACL, I don't know, like even a full year off, which will be into the football season. I'm curious to see, and I know physically he's a freak. The gene pool's different than 99% of all other men out there. But, man, I'm dying to see how he comes back from this thing before everybody decides to put him back on Kansas City or go to Buffalo or anywhere else.
Yeah, and it sounds like he has one more procedure that he needs to have done as part of that recovery process too. So kind of a long journey back from him. And I wouldn't assume anything. That maybe is a guy who that process probably takes a while. I think teams will kind of want to get a feel for what his recovery window's like and how well he's moving when he can actually train and build up. There's also kind of the off-the-field investigation that the league has going on from some of the off-the-field stuff with his ex-wife. And I think there's a lot of questions with Tyreek that doesn't make it an assurance at all that he's going to find a sensible landing spot anytime soon. I suspect it'll be a while. That might end up being something that happens closer to the start of the season or potentially in season for a team that adds him, depending on what that recovery window looks like for Tyreek, which we obviously don't know.
All right, let's get to the big fish, man. We beat up the big fish last week. I guess some people said we went too far and whatever. Anyway, Tua Tagovailoa, $54 million. They said, you heard John Eric Sullivan say we'd like to know real soon on what we're going to do. We've told him we'll let him know real soon what's going to happen. Could something happen this week, even if they don't make the move, at least let him know what they're thinking going forward?
Yeah, so depending on what the Dolphins announced 3 of the 4 cuts yesterday, and I'm going to get to the Tua stuff, but I think Bradley Chubb ties into this a little bit. If they end up designating post-June 1st Bradley Chubb, I think that leaves the door open for the Dolphins to probably have a post-June 1st designation for Tua if they decide they're going to move on. I think there's kind of 2 avenues that they can take at this stage. But with them eating the dead cap charges from the other guys, they're either going to keep Tua on the roster through the summertime and try to explore the trade, in which case, they can maybe move the money around as far as the cap classification within the contract because they have to pay it no matter what, right? And I think that's more likely if they were to move on from Bradley in the here and now and just take the $7 million in cap savings. But if Bradley gets designated as a post-June 1st cut, and you only get 2 of those every offseason, and you have to have the player on the roster for the first day of the league year in March. So if they keep Chubb until the start of the league year in March, and then they designate him as a post-June 1st cut, they get $20 million in cap savings that goes into effect. They get no savings at first, but then on June 2nd, they get $20 million in cap savings. So I think if they go post-June 1st with Bradley, that leaves the door open for the Dolphins to do a post-June 1st with Tua and carry the $55 million cap charge up until they're credited him being off the roster, and they save like $1 million for incentive money for like a workout bonus is what they would say. All said and done.
Yeah. So there's so many different parts. Like, hey, Tua, we don't know if you're going to be around. We don't need you to show up for all the workouts, or how do you? It's just awkward. I mean, the whole thing of like maybe around, and I don't know. Can we trade him? I keep hearing about all these creative trades of like we'll throw in a bunch of money of the $54 million. We'll throw in a draft pick. Would you be interested? I'd love to know. Now I hear people talking about former player comes out and says Minnesota Tua would be great for Minnesota. And I was like, okay, same kind of problems, just going to a different team. What do you think happens?
Well, and the other part about Minnesota is Tua called the defensive coordinator there a horrible person like 2 years ago.
That's a good point too.
I don't know how eager I am to sign myself up for that if I'm Minnesota, but I think what probably ends up happening, we've heard some consistent messaging that they'd like to try to find a trade. If that is the case, if they're intent on exploring that because of the cap situation with his contract as it currently is, that move has to happen in the summertime. So if they're really intent on doing that, then the most likely avenue, in my opinion, is they keep him on the roster through the end of the spring, and then they try to explore trades after June 1st in which they could split the cap charges and whatever money they end up eating. I think the least likely thing to happen is that the Dolphins give a deluxe draft pick away with Tua to get somebody to effectively buy the contract out from Miami, because we've heard John Eric Sullivan preach about the importance of draft capital and how important it is, and it's your lifeblood. And
right.
I think the draft picks are more valuable than the year one cash/cap savings that could come if you offload Tua at the expense of a deluxe draft pick. I don't foresee that being a likely outcome in the cards.
All right, so there's still a couple guys. I think we're all curious. Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's watching this whole thing up in Boca where he lives. I'm curious. What do you think? What do you think happens? I can't imagine Minkah wants to go through this rebuild. What do you think?
Probably not. I also think he's probably the player on the roster that you could get a clean break from, that you could probably get a decent draft pick from. Like, you have your rookie contract guys like Achane and whatever you want to think about that decision for a running back for a team that's going through a rebuild. But I think Minkah's he's a high cost player that I think probably gets you the best draft pick of all the high cost players that you could realistically move on from. Like Waddle, you could trade Waddle, but you'd lose like $12 million more against the salary cap by trading Jalen Waddle. So I don't know how likely that is now that some of these other cap dominoes have started to fall. So Minkah would make a lot of sense with Jeff Hafley and his background as a defensive backs coach. I would love to keep Minkah. I think you probably need to trim some more fat elsewhere around the rest of the roster. If you were going to do that, it would probably necessitate some kind of an extension. The safety room in Green Bay for Hafley was one of the strengths of the team. I think Minkah would be a great piece and an asset for that. But if you're going to cash out, he's going to be his age 30 season.
Yeah.
You probably get a mid-round draft pick and save $15.6 million in salary if you were to trade him. So that one's going to be interesting to see. I would be surprised if they really test and see what kind of market they could find for him.
So there's one guy that I'm really interested in bringing in free agency, and we're sitting here talking about all kinds of problems with money, and I understand that. But this Malik Willis thing, if there's one guy, just looking at all these quarterbacks, I don't know if you agree with this or not, from guys you can trade for that you might be able to get, whether it's Vegas, whether it's San Francisco, or just all the veterans that are free agents right now that are out there, and you know all the names from Russell Wilson to Mariota to all these guys. I think Malik Willis has the potential most upside of anybody that I would be willing to take a chance on, not only to be a Band-Aid quarterback for now, but maybe your quarterback long term. Are you with me on that? Or because it could be expensive and he could want too much money and they just have to close the door on that.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I think, 26 years old, he's a high tools player from an arm strength and an athleticism standpoint. That matters, right? And if you're going to swing the bat on somebody this year, it should be somebody that could have the long-term payoff. And if you spend the money and he's not great or he's not good, then you're going to be in a position to draft a quarterback next year anyway. The concern about the money, what I would say is this, Joe, right now, after getting rid of, it's close to $70 million in payroll that they offloaded yesterday with the guys that they got rid of. They're down to 26th in the league in cash spending this year, right now. So for 2026, their cash commitments, 26th in the league, and more than 25% of the actual cash that they have committed for payroll this year belongs to Tua Tagovailoa. So when you look at it through that lens, they all of a sudden are near the bottom of the league for cash spending. If they're going to spend on one contract and it's an economically friendly option relative to starting quarterback money, John Eric Sullivan's talked about how this whole thing starts with the quarterback, right? And they're going to take swings every year. And he invoked names of bad contracts like Seattle signing Matt Flynn is an example of the process that helped to lead to finding a quarterback.
Yeah.
So, I would not shy away from it at all. If I were the Dolphins, because they know him better than anybody, if they have the conviction, go sign a 2-year contract with whatever number guaranteed. And, you're really not going to be spending a lot in free agency elsewhere anyway. And if it flops, then okay, you're still in a position to draft a quarterback next year anyway. I don't see the downside with it personally.
We have one other topic here that's kind of important, and that is guys like De'Von Achane who want to be paid before he gets another carry as one of the top 5 or 6 running backs in the game, and still a young guy. What do you do on that one? Because what's next. If he ain't getting his money, is probably going to say, maybe you need to trade me.
Here's the thing that I think that this is a really important decision in my mind for this regime, because it's a tone-setting opportunity, right? How are you going to be known for how you conduct your business? And I think I remember you guys went into this last week, you and Bo, right? Is the first time somebody squeaked the wheel, it got some oil, right? It got attention, and it got a new deal, and it got new guarantees, and this and that with the old guard that was in.
Yeah, we called that pouting, but I like yours. Yours sounded better. They'll be much happier with what you said. So go ahead. I like that better.
So the Dolphins, the attractive part about rookie contracts is their cost-controlled windows, running backs, and the franchise tag and transition tags. It's significantly cheaper than the vast majority of other positions across the league. I'm not saying that the Dolphins should, put their heels in the ground and play hardball and tell De'Von you're going to play this year on your contract no matter what, but they're going to go through a negotiation process, I'm sure, try to find a good price that everybody feels good about, that's fair and compensates him for what he's been on the field. But if it doesn't come to pass, okay, like I got you under contract this year, and you've got the franchise tag that we could use next year if we have to. Like these tools are out there and they exist. And I'm fascinated to see, especially because it's year one with that position, a running back, as good as De'Von is. I think he's phenomenal, right? And I want him here long term. I do. But, the sun, the moon, the stars, I don't know that you come in and you sign that contract right off the jump with what needs to get done with this entire team. So that's how I am kind of curious how they're going to go about it.
I was asked about this. I just wanted to get, before I let you go, Tua or Kyler Murray, if you had to have one, who would you feel better with, knowing both teams would love to get rid of both guys if they could?
Kyler's got some more athletic traits. I would say Kyler, just for, I think everybody benefits from a change of scenery. I think Tua benefits from a change of scenery. I think the Dolphins benefit from a change of scenery. If it's Kyler, you're presuming that they're probably going to have to cut him when it's all said and done. So you could sign it, and he's got guarantees this year on his contract, so he'd be in on a 1-year deal for vet minimum.
Yeah.
It's not like you're paying any extra, right? And that's as compared to even like Malik Willis, we're talking about giving a $20, $25 million contract to. It's Kyler Murray would be 18.5 to 23.5 million less than that on a 1-year deal. So I don't think Kyler's a long-term answer for an NFL team at quarterback, but I just think this regime knows that this player here in Tua is not their answer, and the more reps you commit to him when you know he's not your answer long-term is counterproductive.
Yeah. Well, listen, it got started yesterday, and really no surprises. We knew it was coming, and probably you think we hear anything on Tua this week, Kyle, or no?
I don't think so. I'd be surprised if that one happens this week, just because I've heard so much of their interest in trying to trade him, which means they have to milk this process out. I'd be surprised if we get that one this week.
Yeah, good call. Kyle, thank you as always, brother. Appreciate it.
Of course, Joe. Good talking with you.
All right.